One of the most exciting competitions to compete in when you play Sorare Fantasy Football is the Under-23 division. It's one of the divisions that I think every Sorare player dips their toe into the water with or has ambitions of building their team towards being like a genuine powerhouse in. There's a few main reasons why people play this division. The first one, of course, is the Under-23 category. So that means every card that Sorare issue out as a reward, forget about the money or whatever else might be going on, every card is also exclusively under 23. So this is a division that pays out the rewards, Wonderkid cards. Second reason a lot of people love playing this division, because it is Wonderkid cards that are involved on the secondary market. As you see in the real footballing market, when a guy goes from being an unknown prospect to a household name, that changes their whole dynamic in the Sorare secondary market, and you can pick up guys for next to nothing, and as soon as they transfer to a big team and become a big thing, then subsequently they're worth a lot more money. And a lot of people love getting involved in that scouting element of finding guys, making a name for themselves in the game, using them in fantasy football, and then ultimately, seeing where their career goes from there. And the third one is kind of like a mixture of both of them, but it is for me the most fun division to get involved in, because there's a few details that we'll get into it in this explainer video today about how you should be playing under 23, or, what the best practices are, the best way to formulate your initial team, and the building blocks of what you'll need to build your own strategy to attack this division. Because first things first, this is a division that you will have to be watching real world football on a regular basis to maintain with your gallery, because we're talking about players that are under 23. They are still, like I've already mentioned, forging their career. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, they're going to be in the team and they're going to be out the team. And for me, the players that are the most successful in this division, first and foremost, watch a good kind of base of their cards. Now, your appetite for football might be absolutely incredibly massive, like mine is here on the channel, or it might be modest, might be normal. You might watch a couple of games a week, whatever it might be. That's something for you to really make note of at this stage, because keeping on top of so many players can be a bit of a job in itself, and this is a game, it should be fun. And that's just one of the first bits and pieces I like to get out the way in the beginning of these videos. Now, if you are brand new to Sorare and you haven't even opened up your account yet, there's a link in the description in this video that will get you the best sign-up offer possible for anyone starting the game. Today, it's a market discount, so if you go and spend money, buy a couple of cards, you'll get some money off it, which is fantastic. By clicking that link, you support all the content here at the channel, and I thank you in advance if you do so. If you do get stuck, or if you've got any questions or whatever, jump into the comment section and I'll come and sort you out. At any point in this video, if you laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, I need you to subscribe to the channel. We are pushing for 10,000 subscribers, and I can't do that unless you hit that subscribe button. I don't know if you've done it for anyone recently, but when you do, it flashes all sorts of cool colours. It'll make you feel good inside, and it'll help the channel here. And hit the like button, get involved in the comment section, and let me know who are the must-have under 23 hidden gems as you find the video today. And let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, as you probably know already, Sorare is five-a-side fantasy football. Now, there's lots of regions, Champion Euro, Challenger Euro, Asia, America, all these types of things that are geography based. So whatever league and whatever club that your card plays for kind of dictates what ones are eligible for or not. But under 23 for me is one of the more unique divisions in the sense that it's not a geography, it's on the player's age. So it is a global competition. You can be picking up emerging talents from South America, North America, Europe, Asia, whatever you fancy doing it, and competing in this division. And like I say, all the cards that are paid out are also under 23s from all around the world. The goalkeeper is the #1 position of pain when it comes to building an under 23 team. It is going to be far and away the most expensive part of the team if you're going to be buying someone today that does play as a #1 goalkeeper in a senior professional team and is also under the age of 23. A Wonderkid goalkeeper. There's not too many of them around world football, never mind European or domestic, depending on wherever you are. And because of that, on Sorare, they are one of the most scarcest animals out there in the wild, I was going to say the Wild West there, or the Serengeti. I'm not too sure how to think of it. So because of this, really, no matter what your budget, when it comes to playing under 23 seriously for a longer term, you need to build up a production line, a knowledge base of goalkeepers that are currently not playing, that could be playing in the near future. As we even just scan over the Sorare market at the moment, you can see with the player charts that accompany the card here, there's not that many of them that are regular players or even regular performers. Sometimes they might have a good game and then quite quickly might be followed up with a really bad game then after. So there's a couple of things you really need to understand with the playing goalkeepers that you'd be looking to pick up for your under 23 team. The first one is they have to actually be a really good goalkeeper, because if they are going to go on and forge a career in under 23s playing football for you in fantasy football, they have to be doing good enough to make a career. Now, the majority of goalkeepers that are available on Sorare that are under 23 that do play football regularly do tend to be closer to that 23 age, because it's very rare 19, 18, 17-year-olds, etc. get regular minutes as a goalkeeper. So because the ones that are more solid, you need to be buying them a bit older. They're generally not going to be eligible for the competition for like 5 or 6 years. It's very rare you find a goalkeeper that could possibly even offer that type of situation. Martin van de Voort is probably the closest thing that we've had to that on Sorare. The Genk #1 has signed a pre-contract agreement last summer with RB Leipzig for this, no, it was like 2 years ago or something. So it feels like this guy's career's pretty nailed on. He's been pretty solid, he's been pretty good. Most people that scout around football, play Football Manager or whatever, have maybe heard of Van de Voort. But he is like the unicorn. He is one of the one-offs that has a real established career ahead of him, and also very young. Now, like I mentioned, some of these goalkeepers are going to come in and out of favour, come in and out of form as well, and it will let you down. If you're going to be playing under 23s competitively, you will need to be prepared to play a bit of pass the parcel with some goalkeepers. If you do try and just, take a shortcut with, I'll just get this guy rather than that guy because he's a wee bit cheaper and I can get him sooner rather than later, which means I can play quicker, which means I can try and win quicker. When these situations turn against you, like I say, you need to be ready to do a bit of pass the parcel and maybe walk into the market again and do some more business. And for me, on this channel, whenever we're building a strategy, we want to go back to the well. We want to go back to the market as little as possible, because the more transactions we do, you just generally tend to hemorrhage out some value because you'll be giving up more in the trade to get a deal done and stuff like this. Now, the list of goalkeepers that fit this kind of criteria to be your #1 keeper, a guy that is a #1, is going to be a #1 for the next, for the foreseeable future, is under 23 eligible until at least this season or next season, depending on what your scope, what your target is. But after that, we then need to be going and looking at that production line that we spoke about earlier on. Have a look at some of these guys that are current DNPs. Now, as I look at this list, Jonas Urbig is a big one that pops out to me. He came up on my radar last year as being a guy that was getting under 17 caps for Germany, right? So a youth international, any recognised, international tournament where they're going to get statistics captured for them, is something you want to take note of, because Jonas Urbig has since had 2 loans into the Bundesliga 2, since being a DNP rookie card and going into Bundesliga 2. That is a scored league in Sorare, and he's fine. He plays most of the time. He is under 23, so yeah, there is some peaks and troughs that come along with him, but he's playing every week and his scores are actually improving. So whether it be a youth international like a Jonas Urbig, or even someone like a Dominik Katarski, a guy who was at Ajax at the time, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, he came into my gallery and he was an under 21 international for Croatia and all the rest of it. But the point with him is he was at a really big team, and if you look at the Ajax squad, there's regularly 4, maybe sometimes 5 goalkeepers registered in the first team that actually go on to get a Sorare card. And if you look at some of these bigger clubs, maybe even some of the bigger academy type clubs, they've got such a bigger roster of first team goalkeepers that the opportunity to get one that isn't playing, isn't anywhere near playing, but if they're actually good, could get a move. Because as we go on and we're going to try and build the rest of this team out, the goalkeeper, having a #1 goalkeeper, the security of that is going to become paramount. It's going to be very expensive to make sure you do it easily as well. So we're going to need to be very creative, like I say, with some of these backups and trying to buy some guys when they're dropped. A guy that does look to be a #1, if they does get dropped, because these things do happen to young goalkeepers, but you still back him, you think, oh no, I think the guy will get back in next season or at the end of the month or whatever it might be. Sometimes using some of those dip opportunities to buy in, because goalkeeper is the position that I've spent most of the video on so far, obviously, but I do believe that this is a position that in your planning and your preparation, you shouldn't just be thinking about the goalkeeper you're going to bring in to be your #1, but you really need to think about buying 2 or 3 DNP keepers. DNP did not play goalkeepers over the next 3-6 months, a year, whatever. You need to have some guys on your hit list that when the opportunity arises, you can pick up on the cheap and they can help you out later on. Now, one thing you'll have not heard me say so far in building this under 23 team, when we're talking about the goalkeepers, is stacking it with the rest of the players in the team somehow. Because stacking, where you take players from the same team and line them up in your Sorare team, so that you just need to control one outcome, you just need to forecast one team beating another and hoping the 5 guys you've picked just get the good scores and easy does it, isn't really an option in under 23s, because there's very few clubs that play an under 23 goalkeeper and an under 23 defense in front of them that isn't get full of guys that are a bit more experienced and a bit more hard nosed and blooded in the field, as it were. So looking for the goalkeeper and the defensive pair-up is suboptimal for me, even in this division. Come at me, haters. I don't care what you say. And the defence column, but for under 23 is the best position to be spending money on. What I mean by that is there's a lot of options. There's a lot of young defenders around world football that are like 17, 18, just breaking through, and guys that are 20 to 23, that are much more established first-team football players. Maybe they're even full senior internationals. They might even play for some of the elite clubs in world football, but because they're not the star defender, they maybe don't cost as much money because their utility, their use in Sorare, is maybe just the under-23 division. Now, fullbacks, especially under-23 ones, have a generalisation, a lot of potential to be guys that could break out and score high points, because attacking fullbacks are young, motivated, full of pace and energy, tend to have, when they have a good game, they burn someone, they really do get into the box lots, play lots of balls, help and assist, maybe get a goal, everything kind of kicks off for them. The good fullbacks, this is I'm talking about. But like all fullbacks in Sorare, they are real boom or bust options. So when looking at young fullbacks, you will need to be wary of that, because when they do have peaks, brilliant. But when those troughs come along, they might get dropped out of the team. They might get rested or rotated because they are an under-23 player. It depends on what their position is in the squad. Are they nailed on or not? So fullbacks for me are a wee bit riskier on the pitch and off the pitch in that respect, where they could get you some bigger scores and really help you, but they might hold you back. Like Jeremy Frimpong here is a great example of some peaks and some troughs for sure. And I think over the last couple of years, guys like him, Pedro Porro, when he was at Sporting Lisbon and an under-23 card, you get that sense they could really make a big difference to a game week, for better or for worse, depending on the match and exactly how they do play. Now, for me, in the spirit of this division, the centre-backs are probably the ones I would be gravitating towards, and I would be looking to pair with my goalkeeper. Get that really strong starting goalkeeper in and get a real stud of a centre-back, a guy that's really starting to make a name for himself in European and world football. Ideally, the younger the better, because if they're showing huge promise in playing when they're under 20 especially, then the likelihood of them kicking on and having a really good career, for me, is very, very high, because defenders, you want them, like goalkeepers, to get as many credible minutes under their belt as possible. And when I think about this, the number one example is Castello Luqueba, who came onto the platform as a rookie in Lyon about 2 or 3 seasons ago and was very quickly getting into the Lyon team. If we look all the way back here, you can see him breaking through. And because he's a centre-back, he's not losing a lot of Sorare points from losing possession and frivolous activities that fullbacks get up to. And if they're in a decent enough team, they can hold on to enough clean sheets, then you can see the scoring profile that even a 17, 18-year-old defender in the right situation could potentially offer. He's now moved to the Bundesliga, he's moved to Leipzig. And I don't know if I'd say he's kicked on, he's kind of kept around the same, but he's doing pretty well. And this is a guy that's clearly going to be a first-team footballer as long as he's fit for the foreseeable future. And I think these types of scores give you a much more solid bedrock, along with the goalkeeper, to then, with some of the other positions we're going to come on and talk to, get the points that will really push us up the board a bit higher. We don't want our goalkeeper letting us down with random DNPs or really bad performances. And we really don't want our defence letting us down, because if we get the other positions to fire, having a defender that drops in, and I know Luqueba's got 1 or 2 of them here, like a 24 and a 19 or something, but very, very few and further between. A centre-back like him, or someone like a Taylor Harwood-Bellis. I'm a big fan of a big THB. Just, much better defender and a stronger, he's not a better defender, but in a much better team relative to the field here. Because, for Burnley last year in the Championship, they conceded like no goals. He was a huge part of the defensive play, build out from the back. At the Championship, again, very good scoring profile guy. Centre-backs just feel like the way to go in this division, and I would recommend that. Now, thankfully, some of the big hitters in this division will be aging out, so the next season, the under-23 division, I think, is going to be a lot more open, which is why I think a video like this is pretty exciting to make right now, because if you build a team now, chances are the field will get a little bit easier over the next 6 or 7 months, and if you've built your team with next season in mind, it could be a really shrewd move. The poster child of midfield is Joey Veerman, and I think he really does paint the picture of why you need the midfield. You need a man. You need an all-action midfielder. You don't need an under-23 Wonderkid. You need a man amongst boys, a guy that goes box to box, gets assists, gets goals, gets tackles, triples, really runs the show. He is clearly away and above the last 2 or 3 seasons, the best under-23 midfielder in European football. Closely followed this season by our own Matt O'Reilly, who has been very, very good for Celtic as well. And these are the guys, like in midfield, there's always under-23 midfielder or two. There's normally like a a nice little section of 2 or 3 guys that are always really on form in midfield. Some of them you know about, they're probably quite predictable, and some of them are a little bit more left field, a little bit more random. But in that midfield position, in under 23s, you need a guy that can drop 100 points. You need a guy that can be what we call on the channel the false super rare, the guy that when you put the captain's armband on him, you know he's very good for bringing in over 100 points virtually every game week. And midfield for me, and under 23 is the position to make sure that that person is captured, because like we were just looking at with the defenders, when you get that subpar score in, if the rest of the teams went off, it's just going to fall down to nothing. Like we can see with the Matt O'Reilly and the Julie Veerman types, they've got really high base scores. There's been a few other heroes and legends in the Sorare community over the last couple of years, like Okan Kokchu or Nenzo Fernandez, who's a bit more famous in the world of football now. But these guys have always had huge base averages where they just don't really regularly drop into the amber or the orange scores. They're always scoring very, very high. And because that's what you're competing against, you need to have something like that going for you as well. That could be just as expensive as the goalkeeper, which is why when it comes to building your midfield, you really do need to treat it just like the goalkeepers as well, because these sorts of players, you can profile a few of them. You can forecast maybe the emergence of 1 or 2 of them. You might not know exactly which one, but maybe you can make a list of 4 or 5, and there's a good chance that one of them is going to get the transfer, is going to break into the team, is going to come good. And if you're going to be playing under 23 for a longer period of time, defenders I think you can move in and out of very freely and very regularly. But playing goalkeepers at start and boss midfielders that can really make a team are totally different. You really need to have lots of irons in the fire. And like I said right at the beginning of this video, you need to be watching football. You need to be seeing these guys getting on the pitch. The guy you've got a wee hunch about, oh, I see he's playing for Seville on Friday night. I'll maybe stick it on for 20 minutes. Oh, I see he's just been subbed on. Let me stick it on, have a wee gander, see what he's all about. Because that part of scouting on Sorare for me is a lot of fun. And that's what allows you to get a guy for like next to nothing that when he does break into the team, becomes somebody, can transform your team. Maybe you can sell him into the secondary market and use that money to fund other areas of your squad or whatever, I don't know. But midfield and goalkeeper for me are very closely linked in terms of how you have to treat them and how there's just no margin for error. Don't buy someone that might be good or someone that can be okay. Always go for the better guy. Now, under 23 attackers is probably the hardest position to spend money on because, again, with some of the things that we've mentioned already in the video that under 23s kind of have to go through, the strikers are the most volatile to being dropped, falling out of form, falling out of favour, whatever, because goals are what win matches. And if you're a manager in real life and your job depends on winning matches, you don't care how much prospect that Ryan Cherky has. If you need to win matches and you don't want to play him, then you're not going to play him. You'll play the guy that you fancy. Maybe they're 26 and they're a bit more of a known quantity or something. So because of that, under 23 forwards always have that jeopardy of being dropped, number one. Number two, it means the ones that don't really have that jeopardy or are way more nailed on become even more expensive. And then what that leaves you with is prospects. There's a real divide in the under 23 forward, just reality of real world football. It's real feast or famine. You've either got an Erling Haaland, a Jeremy Doku, a Julian Alvarez, Kylian Mbappe, a Xavi Simons. You've either got someone like that or you've got an Eddie Nketiah. It's really hard to find that middle ground. And what a lot of people do for the 23 forwards is they try and find like wide midfielders or attacking mids that maybe get issued a forward card, or sometimes even defenders in error when they're young enough can get issued a forward card as well. So sometimes people look for those error cards to try and fill out the position. But if you're going to be buying a goalkeeper that plays, if you're going to be doing most of the stuff we spoke about in this video, maybe Erling Haaland would be too expensive, right? Because he is just an absolute goal machine. He isn't going to be under 23 for too much longer, but you really cannot substitute buying goals. As you can even see here with the likes of Vinicius Jr., who is like top of the food chain from the 23 forward. I know he's not always been fit, but like you can see here, he's not regularly smashing some of the huge scores that we've seen. Like, he can, obviously, because he's Vinny, right? He doesn't always, you know, these forwards do get streaky, they do get patchy, and even when they do pop off, like, there's a couple of 90s there, sure, but a lot of 60s and 70s. Luis Palma actually ranks really highly in this list as well. He's a bit of a set-piece taker, so again, guys that take free kicks, penalties, that kind of thing, can maybe punch their stats up a bit for you. But even if we look at Savio, who's been a Brazilian Wonderkid in the City Football Group, ripping it up this year, he paints the picture quite nicely for what you normally get from like a decent under-23 forward that plays quite regularly. Yeah, they play all the time, maybe they hit, maybe they don't, but this is kind of what most of the like genuine attackers in under-23 offer you. Particularly wingers, guys that are like Vinny, like Savio, that take on dribbles, they're much more likely with one decisive action, a goal or an assist, to break that 70-point mark. So wingers generally, I'd probably say favoured over penalty box strikers. But none of these guys are cheap. None of these guys are cheap. They're probably going to be just as expensive, unfortunately, as maybe the midfielder or the goalkeeper. The defender, like I mentioned earlier, is where spending money is really easy and you've got a lot of good options available to you. And really, when you're building your squad out for the first time, you probably will double up in defence in the first instance because you can get really good points per pound in that final position of your five-a-side, with it being a defender, with some of the likes of the players we've looked at already. They can punch above 50 on the regular as your fifth man to facilitate the rest of some of these better players maybe hitting it off a little bit. Now, getting into a Savio, getting into a Veerman, some of these apex predators that we're talking about is expensive, it's hard. Like I mentioned with the midfield and the goalkeeper, the forward probably isn't really that different either, but you really need to find them before they're known for them to be super cheap, but you really need to be watching out what's going out in world football, who's just get injured, who's the 30-year-old that's been injured and there's an 18-year-old on the bench waiting to get some more minutes, that kind of thing. Because again, forward, more than any other position for me, is probably going to be the hardest one to consistently have someone to select, because either their form might dip against you or maybe they get dropped out of the team altogether. So again, very similar to goalkeepers, we can never rest on our laurels with attackers. We need to always make sure we're unearthing someone else that can come into the gallery and fill in for a rainy day. And what I've spoke to you so far about is the main profiles of what you get in the under-23 division on Sorare in real world football for goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward and attacker, right? We know we need to watch lots of football. We know there's going to be highs and lows, but like I said at the beginning of the video, there's three main reasons most people play this division. It's the secondary market for the cards you win. Hopefully they become something you can sell them. It's winning more wonder kids. Maybe you just want to build a club full of these types of emerging talents, and then when they do come off, you don't need to worry about buying them. You've already got them. Your club is under 23. It's a wonder kid farm. That's what you're all about. But your club is going to be very, very active. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you've only got so much time in the day. You've only got so much headspace to be able to keep up to date with different players' squad standing, contract situation, who's going to be coming off the bench, who's just been signed, who's getting loaned, all that kind of stuff. If you really don't know where to start, I would give you a number of 7. Whenever I look at all my under 23 cards, I'm always, there's about a couple in each position, and a goalkeeper, 2, 4, 6, 7. Where I feel I've got a real finger on the pulse with. I'm actually better at predicting whether they're going to start matches or not than the experts quite a lot of the time. So I do feel that once you get that level of knowledge into like 6, 7 cards, you can make some really clever selections every game week. Play players that are maybe not expected to play or not expected to have that great a match, but you've been watching them and you know them and you can make those calls. Those are the calls in the 23 division especially that will make the difference between not finishing in the prizes and getting up to the podium. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. On screen there now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share and retweet, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.